Schenkel, and we're going to be talking about cyber security, and cyber attacks, and the need for business to simulate cyber attacks on a business. Before we get into it, Ian, tell people where they can get hold of you.
Yeah, thanks, Tim, and thanks very much for inviting me. I'm excited to talk about pen testing. It's an exciting subject, trust me. But yeah,
you've been in cyber security for a long time, haven't you?
25 years. And
25 years.
Yeah,
wow.
Believe it or not, the internet was invented 25 years ago, or more than 25 years ago. But yeah, cybersecurity is kind of been in my blood for a long time. But back to where everyone can get a hold of us. So LinkedIn, look up Ian Schenkel. There's actually two of us in the world. One runs a cybersecurity company. The other one runs a food preparation business in California. So there you go.
Right. Do you know each other, or have you said
no? We don't actually. I haven't reached out. I thought that'd be a bit weird. But
cybersecurity is it that's just virus checking software, isn't it?
Well, yeah, that's what everyone says. I remember that, that was a conversation I used to have. We go to dinner parties and nowadays at least there's a lot more press about it and things like that. But yeah, it used to be like, oh, I've got antivirus, I'm covered. Oh, yeah, you couldn't be further from the truth if you tried. There's, just to give you an idea, Windows machines has over 65,000 ports in it, which is 65,000 doors and windows. And so, antivirus does a great job, don't get me wrong. It's a great fundamental starting point. But it really is only addressing a minuscule amount of what cybersecurity actually turns out to be, particularly when you get into networks, which every company has, and everyone has networks now because we have cloud applications. That makes you a network, basically. So,
and I think the whole that whole IT computer thing has suddenly got more complex, isn't it? Because it used to be that what we would have as a data center, and we would. And we had computers that connected to that data center.
Yep.
And now we've got mobile devices. We've got mobile devices that don't belong to us. We've got laptops and Macs and things that don't belong to us, all trying to get into what was a data center is now out on the cloud somewhere.
Yeah, 100%. So, one of the early sort of cybersecurity startups I was involved with, that was virtually the first one that I ran myself in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, was endpoint security. Now, that was back in 2003. And it was that notion then, before that was, laptops weren't really a thing. So you had this nice, easy, contained IT infrastructure. You walk in, you logged into your desktop. Obviously, you couldn't walk out with the desktop. Well, you could, I guess, but you need a sort of wheelbarrow and a truck waiting for you. But you had this nice contained perimeter. So, basically, and at that time in the early 2000s, we started talking about deperimeterization. So laptops, for example, were just starting to be popular. They were affordable for organizations to be replacing desktops. And so all of a sudden, you've got this perimeter, this concept of a perimeter doesn't exist anymore because you can't contain the devices inside that perimeter. Then we've got Wi-Fi. Then we've got, BYOD, bring your own device.
Bring your own device,
yeah. Which is, iPhones, iPads. All of a sudden, that lovely little perimeter that you used to have with a number of machines, hooked in via Ethernet cables, has all of a sudden got to be a bit messy now. And now, we've got cloud applications, we've got data centers, like you say. There's more and more infrastructure that people are using day to day, which gives you a bigger attack surface. And that's realistically what cybersecurity is protecting your attack surface to ensure that there's enough layers of security to keep the bad guys away. And the bad guys are after all sorts of things. Credentials being one of the primary motives. Credentials lead to money. Money is what they're ultimately after on everything. Now, there's some exceptions to that people want industrial secrets and things like that. But generally, it boils down to money, which ransomware is one of the most famous, bits of money extraction that people come up with. Malware that, literally locks your computer down unless you pay me a lot of money. So, we have to make sure that the cybersecurity, portfolio, the cybersecurity posture, as we call it, is as minimal as possible. You've got the smallest blip on the radar that you can possibly show, even though you might be a huge attack surface. You show this very small blip on the radar, which is the best analogy to use.
And I think that, as you say, there seems to be something in the news every week. You know, we have people like Royal Mail where they couldn't deliver any letters and parcels, being hit by malware. And you know, it doesn't kind of get any bigger than that.
Well, yeah, I mean, the latest one actually is the electoral roll.
Oh, yes, right.
It's, you know, so 50 million details have gone AWOL are back to the credentials. So what do credentials give me? That gives me, you know, generally people use the same password everywhere. So if I've got a username and a password, I can now log in. I will try what's, you know, called a brute force attack and use a combination of username and password. Or if I've got your username and password, I will try all of the popular services to see if I can log in using that same details. Now, 9 times out of 10, everyone does use the same password. Bad news. But yeah, the electoral roll is a really interesting one because they were in that network undiscovered for around 6 to 9 months, and that's an average. You know, with what we've seen in the industry, threat actors, as are known, the bad people that perpetrate these, you know, crimes to try and extract details and money. Those guys, they are, or those folks are in networks for around 240 days before they're detected. That's a lot of time to be snooping around. You imagine if you had a burglar wandering around your house for 240 days. I think he'd know they would know the place pretty good, pretty damn well by that stage. So yeah, so it's you know, detecting them is a big part of cybersecurity, but not making sure they can't get in the first place is still the best line of defense, basically.
And for those who may not be UK based, the electoral roll is in the UK is basically a list of everybody who can vote.
Yep, absolutely. And there's lots of theories. I'm not going to, you know, spread the theories of who it was, but the latest theory is it was a nation state and not a very friendly nation state at that. So yeah, well, I think there's going to be more investigation on that one. But yeah, that's, you know, that sort of stuff there is, you know, details are important. You know, it's I think it's been said many times is that, you know, customer information, you know, our information, our personal information, PII, personally identifiable information, that is the new oil now. Because if you've got the details of, you know, users, customers, et cetera, then you've kind of got, you know, the new oil that you can then basically break in to steal money. So yeah.
And there's a list, isn't there, of passwords and that people you know, like password 123 and
yeah, it's quite shocking when you do some of the tests that I've seen and some of the passwords I've seen. So there's a lot of credential harvesting, and you know, I used to work for an organization that does very, you know, fantastic threat intelligence, a company called Flashpoint. You know, great bunch of people. I've got some really good services. But one of the things they do is they have a you know, repository of credentials that have been compromised, about 37 billion. It's a lot. It's a big number. It's a big warehouse. And, you know, some of that stuff, you can buy credentials off the dark web for about $1.50. You know, I could go on there and say, I want to find out Tim Hughes' details, and I could buy your details for about $1.50. It's kind of scary stuff. But the interesting thing is that the threat actors that perpetrate the stealing of the data, you know, the credentials or whatever it might be, they generally don't use it. They sell it. So they then sell it in these underground marketplaces. They sell it to someone that will do something about it. That, you know, so it's very interesting. Threat actors are very siloed in what they do. One will steal it, the other will use it, the other will, you know, they even have threat actor school as well. You can sign up for a course, much like social selling. You can sign up for a course to learn how to be a threat actor or a hacker or whatever you want to be. And they have software you can download to help you out to be a hacker and this sort of thing. It's big business. You know, it's you know, we've seen an increase already this year of ransomware demands. It's up about 35% this year so far, and it's a growing business. And so it's, you know, how do you keep one step ahead of people that have all the time in the world to try and get over, under, through, in, out, you know, this sort of thing. They're very focused on what they're trying to achieve, basically.
So what's pen testing, and why would
So pen testing, actually, it's really interesting. Pen testing's been around. I didn't know this myself. It's been around since the 60s, which I'm like, cool. So obviously that was when you had gigantic computers that filled entire buildings.
Mm.
But that concept of pen testing is very much, it's think of it as a way to simulate a cyber attack. So how do I simulate if someone is going to break into my network or break into my computer to try and steal stuff? We've gone through the why they're trying to do it. But that attack surface, okay, I think I'm protected. I think I'm, I've put these measures in place. I've bought this, all sorts of different software, antivirus. I've got
because everybody will have invested in some level of
some level of cybersecurity. But how do you test to make sure that all the windows and doors are locked? And one of the key things to think about this, and one of the analogies I like to use, is imagine employing a professional burglar to come around to your house and say, I can get in through that window, I can get in through that door, I can rattle that lock there, that one's not going to put up any. And that's what pen testing is. It literally is a simulated cyber attack that a hacker would use, using exactly the same methodologies that a hacker would use. These underground schools that I just mentioned of how to teach them how to be hackers. A pen test uses that exact same methodology that a hacker would use to try and get in and gain control to extract information, whatever their MO is. They will use those same same techniques. So what we do is we enable an organization to see what their security posture is. How big is that radar target, that I spoke about earlier on? We'd love to, show them a report that shows them as a tiny little dot on the radar rather than a big, massive ship that, is going to be an easy target. And that's what where we start with things. Cybersecurity is essential for everybody. And a lot of companies have spent a lot of money on it, and a lot of individuals spend a lot of money on it. But how do you know? How do you test to make sure that the money that you've spent on cybersecurity is effective, is actually keeping the bad folks out of your network? How do you know they're not just wandering in and doing whatever they need to do? So a pen test is that really fantastic base level that gives you a quick overview of what your it gives you an in-depth overview, a very, very in-depth overview. We have pen tests that are about 84 pages.
What's the output of it?
So the key thing is to work out where your weaknesses are. So where are you vulnerable? So how can someone just simply go through an open port? Is there a vulnerability because there's not enough protection around what's called the endpoint, which is the laptop or desktop or something like that? Is there are your cybersecurity defenses actually working? Did it pick up? Because it should. If cybersecurity is working, it should refuse entry for the pen test and not allow it to go ahead. So you can do that. So the outcome is very much a full report on where the weaknesses are, if there's any misconfigurations, which can lead to weaknesses again, compromised passwords. So it goes out and does reputational checks out on the open web. So if you put in a password of one of your admins because you're concerned about it, the pen testing tools that we use will ensure that password is not being compromised, so people can literally walk in the front door because they've got a key. As simple as that.
The classic is you have an admin password and the password is admin123.
Yeah, and trust me, you see that. But yeah, I mean, you think of the weaknesses. It's misconfigurations. It's anything that's got vulnerabilities around it. It might be right through to patching. Because all of the OS providers, Apple and Windows, primarily Linux, obviously, they all have patches to update to make sure that the vulnerabilities as they're discovered are terminated. They put out an update and there they go. But again, how do you know every single machine is up to date? And how do you know that that's not creating a weakness that's a vulnerability? So what the pen test and the pen test we have here at Endida is a fairly new type of pen test. Pen test's been around since the 60s. They've always been quite manual. So you basically get what's called an ethical hacker. So like I said, professional burglar. Yep. They come in and they will employ all these techniques and tools and things like that, and then they will see if they can get through your network. And that's great for a large size organization. It'll take days and then the report comes out and brilliant. But what we're finding now is that pen tests are applicable to everyone. If you're a 2-person organization, you still need a pen test, because how do you know that you're not going to be attacked? And there's plenty of smaller organizations that, the price of a pen test has been prohibitive so far, because it takes a physical person, physical days to complete. What we've got is a brand new way of doing this, which is, AI and machine learning. And it's, the advancements in AI are incredible. Even the last few months has been incredible. But the solution we've got is it enables an organization to have a pen test without actually anyone going on site. So we put a little piece of software called a Docker container inside the network. Think of it as a sort of a beacon, so that the AI pen testing software then knows what it's looking at and where to look. And it then goes in and basically employs all of the techniques that a manual pen tester would use, but that's all fully autonomous, not automatic, it's autonomous. So it actually goes and wanders itself. You don't have to direct it or anything like that. And it employs all of the techniques that a manual pen tester uses, but of course it does it automatically. And with it being AI, it doesn't stop at the very first. If it finds a vulnerability on a particular device, it's like, oh, look, I'll record that and write that down. It keeps going, and it might find 4 or 5 different vulnerabilities on that same device, because it throws a bunch of different techniques at that device. So you get a much more thorough, much more in-depth pen test than you would with a manual pen tester, much quicker and much less invasively as well. There's no big rig to set up or anything like that. It's very quick and very easy.
And so what you're saying is that this is applicable for small companies as well as big companies.
Yeah. So we've built this to a point where we've been talking to a lot of organizations since we took this product on. It's a very exciting product for us. And, a lot of companies that we hadn't really thought of, they're sort of turning around, 3 or 4 people, and they're saying, look, we need to have a pen test. A lot of supply chains now are demanding it. If you're going through ISO accreditation, they demand it. ISO 27001, 9001, that sort of thing. They demand a regular pen test. If you supply if you're part of a supply chain for a large organization, the NHS, for example, they're now making it mandatory for you to have a pen test every single year if you're supplying them, because they might have their house in order and their data hygiene and all that sort of, their cybersecurity posture beautifully done. If they let you in because you're a supplier and you're obviously now everything's connected by the internet and cloud and that sort of thing, then how do they know that's not a bad entry point for them? So therefore, they want to know what your security posture is. The same as cyber insurance. We work with a lot of insurers because they want to know what is the base level of this customer that I'm insuring. Do they have the necessary products in place? And that affects the premium every year, because it's a risk assessment. So we're providing them with a very solid, very, basically you can take it to court with you type of thing, or document to say, this is what your cybersecurity posture looks like. And so therefore, we are going to, we think there's more risk involved or less risk involved. So therefore, your premium will be adjusted. And so, so we're working with a lot of insurance companies, a lot of companies that are doing compliance, like I said, ISO compliance, etc. There's a ton of them out there. Cyber Essentials, which is the NCSC, National Cybersecurity Center. A lot of them now, the pen test gives you that lovely base. This is what my posture looks like. From there, it gives you fantastic plans to be able to remediate, to fix, to patch, to undo the weaknesses and things like that. So it's a great starting point.
Ian, thank you so much for coming on and talking about pen testing and the need to simulate cyber attacks on a business. Fascinating subject. Remind people where they can get hold of you.
Yeah, so very easy. As you can see across my shoulder, Endida is our company name. So endida.com, nice and easy. Find me on LinkedIn. Like I said, there's only 2 of us, Ian Schenkel, that sort of thing. But we'd love to talk to anybody that needs to have a look at what their security posture looks like.
And you're the one on LinkedIn that talks sometimes about sailing.
Yeah, I've got a bad sailing habit. It's quite good. Yeah, no, it's love sailing, love racing. Cybersecurity and racing. Yeah, what can
Well, absolutely. They have certain things in common.
they certainly do. No, it's been brilliant. So no, thank you very much, Tim. It's been a really interesting chat, and
You're welcome, and thank you for coming on and sharing that with us. I think it's a fascinating subject, and I think that the learning for me is that this is applicable for small companies as well as big companies.
And that's the thing, is that it's if you're a 2 or 3 person company, you still need pen testing because you're still vulnerable. So
yeah, Ian, thank you so much for coming on and sharing that.